kidnap, rape, you name it, and they do nothing to stop you or protect themselves, you have created a doubly enslaved subject. So that's one of the definitions of revelation of the method, and it's perfectly illustrated in this CNBC clip that you just saw, where they flagrantly throw it in your face. We're run by a banking dictatorship. Deal with it. Can't do anything about it. Move on. October surprise. Will Israel attack Iran before the election? Kurt Nimmo, INFOWARS.com. On Saturday, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported a senior Israeli official as saying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has decided to attack Iran prior to the elections in the US. Quote, US defense contracts, an Iranian F-16 acquisition, and Israel's new military preparation suggest that all sides are getting ready for whatever may come, Haaretz wrote, citing a report by Business Insider. Business Insider and Haaretz did not venture to speculate when Israel would launch such an attack. On Sunday, Michael Carmichael suggested that the attack would occur during the Democrat National Convention. Quote, military experts have long agreed that the sweet spot for an Israeli attack on Iran will be this coming September or October, precisely because of the timing of the US presidential election cycle, Carmichael explains. So we've got that whole situation bubbling under the surface once again, because previous reports said that the attack had been delayed until 2013. You routinely get rumors of an October surprise during election season, but meanwhile, not far away, this very much ties into it. US struggles to install proxy brotherhood in Egypt by Tony Cartolucci. Were anyone to still believe the rhetoric of the so-called Arab Spring, one would be admittedly confused over the emerging political landscape in Egypt, where the military establishment and the Muslim Brotherhood have emerged from what was supposedly a pro-democracy popular uprising. However, if anyone understood that the pro-democracy protesters were in fact US State Department funded, trained and equipped mobs providing cover for the attempted installation of the Muslim Brotherhood amongst many other political Western proxies, the current battle would make perfect sense. So we've now got Mohamed Morsi as the new president of Egypt, along with the Muslim Brotherhood that's backing him, who have openly, in addition, backed the NATO-led attempt to overthrow Syria. So again, the people of a nation have been completely duped by one of these fake US State Department-funded color revolutions with the aid of the April 6 movement, which again is nothing more than a front for the US State Department. And it's all part of the path to Persia. First Syria, then Iran. And you saw what happened to Gaddafi and Mubarak. Any regime that's not completely on board with this New World Order, with this drive through the Middle East, is subverted or toppled. And the Muslim Brotherhood, as we know, is also financing the so-called Free Syrian Army to destabilize Assad for and on behalf of the NATO powers. Basically, they're just a puppet organization, and that's why they've been handed symbolic control of Egypt. Another story that we had, Hani Noor El-Din, again of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Egyptian member of parliament, actually a member of a group designated as a terrorist organization by none other than the US State Department. And he went to Washington to meet with Obama administration officials. So just like the MEK in Iran, LIFG in Libya, both designated as terrorist groups by the State Department, and yet both working with the US military-industrial complex to overthrow Iran and Libya. Now you've got the same situation in Egypt, where basically these radicals, these Muslim Brotherhood that are on the side of NATO in every imperial venture, are now in power. So again, what the news media calls the Arab Spring, what is marketed as an organic grassroots uprising, has once again resulted in working towards the long-term goals of the military-industrial complex. Now, the Brotherhood's in charge in Egypt. The path to Persia via Syria and Iran is all the more clear. And also sticking with Syria on the next story, Turkey to convene emergency NATO meeting. Turkey is to convene an emergency session of NATO after declaring that Syria's shootdown of one of its fighter jets amounted to a direct challenge to its national security. The Turkish government brushed off protestations in Damascus that Friday's incident was an accident, accusing Syria of deliberately bringing down the F-4 Phantom both in international airspace and without warning. So after first trying to downplay all this, Turkey's now scheming with NATO to try and dress this up as some kind of provocation to insinuate that Syria's committed an act of aggression. And we've got this clip, which we're going to play now, people on a beach in Syria near where this plane went down, near where it was shot down. And they're eyewitnesses, and you can hear the gunfire in the distance. And if you blow up the video, you can see the plane plunge into the sea. And, you know, this is supposedly 13 miles off the coast, and they're claiming that Syria had no right to shoot down this Turkish fighter jet because it was in international airspace, even though they admitted in the first place that it had already violated Syria's airspace. So just imagine for a second that you've got a foreign fighter plane, or indeed any plane, coming in at a distance of 13 miles from the White House. How long is it going to take a fighter jet to cover 13 miles? You know, imagine you're in New York looking out over the Hudson River and you see a fighter jet in the distance. Do you think the Pentagon would want to shoot it down? Well, you know, unless it's 9/11, where for one day all standard operating procedure was suspended, then yes, of course they're going to shoot it down. And Syria's on an emergency war footing. Of course they're going to shoot down a fighter jet that's so close that people on a beach can see it being blown out of the sky. And again, international airspace. They've just crafted it out of nothing after admitting that it already violated Syria's airspace in the first place when the story emerged on Friday. But no, we saw the outrage, the immediate outrage again from Hillary Clinton and William Hague, because of course it's only NATO powers that are allowed to violate international airspace. There's only NATO powers that are allowed to bombard broken back third world countries at will. Oh, but I forget, I'm sorry, that's actually called a humanitarian no-fly zone, and all they're doing is dropping love bombs. Let's get it straight. So basically, Turkey's freaking out. They're running to NATO. Warmongers are trying to gin it up and say that it was, you know, an act of aggression, trying to exploit it to increase power, to increase pressure on Assad. And it's all a hoax. I mean, they admitted that it had gone into Syrian airspace. The people on the beach could see it. They shot the plane down, and now Turkey's up in arms about it, and they're trying to use it as propaganda. So it continues to be an unfolding story. Next story, geoengineering could turn skies white. Scientific American. The white haze that hangs over many major cities could become a familiar sight everywhere if the world decides to try geoengineering to create a cooler planet. Scientists have long suspected that one oft-discussed geoengineering technique, shooting tiny sulfate particles into the upper atmosphere to deflect sunlight, could turn the blue sky white. Nature has already provided a basic proof of concept. When Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines in 1991, spewing tons of sulfate particles into the atmosphere, it temporarily whitened the sky. In a related story out of the Daily Mail, the transatlantic jet trails visible from space, how contrails can stay in the sky for up to 14 hours. And in this article, they admit that, quote, what they call contrails are forming into clouds. Quote, overall contrails create additional cirrus cloud cover, said Patrick Minnis, senior scientist at NASA's Langley Research Center. So they've gone from calling anyone who talks about chemtrails kooks to now explaining how it's all natural and it's nothing to worry about. Problem is, as you can see from all the comments in the Daily Mail article, these contrails only started hanging around for 14 hours from about the mid-1990s onwards. Decades before that, that kind of phenomena was never witnessed. There's no chance in hell that it can be a natural event without some kind of outside influence. And they also admit in this Daily Mail article, which is based off NASA quotes, that creating artificial clouds through contrails is a potential way of preventing the planet from warming up. So they're openly saying it. Yeah, we're creating clouds, but it's all for global warming. Don't worry about it. Because simultaneously, you've got an army of crackpot geoengineering scientists led by, you know, Mr. Planetary Regime, Mr. Let's sterilize everybody, Mr. You know, let's poison people's drinking water for the good of the earth, John P. Aldrin, being paid millions in government grants to spray sulfur particles into the upper atmosphere for the very same purpose of creating these artificial clouds. So again, we're seeing revelation of the method, as you saw with the CNBC clip. You know, just as the sheeple are starting to stir on this whole chemtrails issue, the likes of, you know, Scientific American, Daily Mail, they come out and assure us that it's all natural, nothing to worry about. But the problem is the impact that these chemtrails are actually having on the environment. Yes, it's a real environmental impact, unlike the man-made global warming hoax. The impact is far from natural. We featured Rosalind Peterson from the Skywatch organization back probably about 18 months ago now. And she's documented how in California these planes fly loops around certain areas. You know, there's no destination. They're not going from point A to point B. They're just flying around in a big circle back and forth again, dispersing chemtrails. And when they actually analyzed the water samples that had been, after the chemtrails had dropped down into the oceans, they found aluminium and barium, which are the two compounds when combined create clouds. That's the whole purpose behind chemtrails, or at least it's the major one. So this is already happening. You know, mass testing on the public through geoengineering without anyone's consent, without any kind of public debate about it. And it's being run by the same kind of mad scientists who want population reduction, you know, want to sterilize us through our water supply and all the rest of it, John P. Holdren's planetary regime. And then we've got all the projects, as we've documented, focused around injecting sulfur into the atmosphere, which is what this NASA thing talks about, which is proven to cause both acid rain and lower the immune system of human beings. But now, thanks to NASA and all the experts, we can go back to sleep, because suddenly, even though this has only started happening from 15 years ago onwards, it's all natural, it's all fun, it's all happy. Just don't look up in the sky, keep your head to the ground, and everything's going to be all right. And conveniently for them, that argument avoids them having to justify geoengineering, which itself is opposed by a multitude of scientists, because they know all the untold environmental disasters that it could precipitate. So just by claiming that, you know, artificial cloud formation through contrails is a magical, natural phenomenon that just happened to appear out of nowhere 15 years ago is not going to cut it. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. This has only been witnessed over the past 15 years. It was not witnessed in previous decades. And whenever these chemtrails are analyzed, we find out that they're directly related to geoengineering and cloud formation. Quote of the day on INFOWARS Nightly News comes from our good friend Eric Holder, who we're going to talk about, of course, with the interview coming up. Though this nation has proudly thought of itself as an ethnic melting pot in things racial, we have always been, and continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards. So speaks our good friend Eric Holder, who himself has been busy for months being exactly that, a lying coward, refusing to acknowledge the Obama administration's role in Fast and Furious, refusing to turn over documents, claiming that emails that talk about Fast and Furious directly are talking about something completely different. So the lying coward Eric Holder lecturing us all about not being lying cowards, something quite ironic in that quote. Now we're going to throw to Rob Dew, who's got some breaking news about the winner of the Stop Obama Dictator poster contest, and also an update on the INFOWARS reporter contest. So now we go to Rob Dew.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Before we get to the winners of the Obama poster contest that we've just launched, this is the phase 1, and then we're going to have a phase 2 winner in a couple weeks. I wanted to share with you a video that we just posted on the Alex Jones channel, and it is entitled Whistleblower, TSA Hiring Criminals on Purpose. And we had a whistleblower call in from a TSA checkpoint in Rhode Island, and he is confirming everything that we've been saying concerning the criminals. And they purposely look for prisoners,